Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 3 big mistakes that music educators make that hold their students back and that truthfully hold themselves back as well. If we haven't met yet, I'm Jennifer Roig-Francolí. I'm the creator of The Art of Freedom, and I specialize in helping musicians and creatives feel better and enjoy making their art better as well. So let's just dive right in. The first mistake that, and by the way, I want to say that not everybody obviously makes all of these mistakes all the time. But I really believe that we all do make these mistakes to some degree or another a lot of the time. And I include myself in this category because I am, of course, also a music educator as well as a million other things. So the first mistake that we make is to lose sight of the big picture. We get our priorities out of order. And when I'm talking about the big picture, let's just go straight to the heart of the matter. I'm talking about losing sight and forgetting why we're teaching in the first place. Why are we musicians in the first place? Getting out of touch and disconnected with the spirit of music and of ourselves as musicians. So there's a spiritual disconnection that happens, and it's usually very subtle and unconscious. We're most of the time not even aware of it. We're just going along doing our thing. We're teaching, and our teaching can be really good for all intents and purposes. And we could feel good about our teaching. But are we really, really, really connected to the deep purpose? Because if we're not, if we forget about this too often, and we're just going on habitual autopilot, teaching the way that we always do, it's really easy to get our priorities out of order. And what happens when we do that is that we end up going for the goals instead of the spirit of the process, the joy of the process. And music really is a process. Music is something, maybe even more than many other arts. As soon as you make a note, it's gone. I mean, it can be sustained on the sound waves, but if you play a phrase, you play a piece, unless you record it, that sound is gone forever. And even on a recording, you only get a fraction of the actual experience of making the music. So music is a process. Teaching is a process. Learning is a process. And for it to really be what it needs to be with the depth and meaning and spirit of the thing, we have to be conscious of connecting to spirit, to connecting to the deep love that we have in our hearts for this musical process that we have. And again, if we lose sight of that, it's okay. I mean, we're always going to forget about it from time to time. But unless you make a conscious, concerted effort to prioritize that spirit of what you're doing in the moment, in the process, above all else, you're going to fall. We are going to fall into the habit of goal-oriented thinking and acting. And what's wrong with that, a lot of things are wrong with that. But in a nutshell, just really briefly, something that's wrong with that is that it takes the spontaneous creativity out of it. And a lot of music educators don't even encourage their students to experiment. If you're not experimenting and getting creative as a teacher, and you're not encouraging your students to also get playful and creative and experimental in their approach, then you run the risk of narrowing the process, getting rigid about it, getting too serious about it, getting driving and pushing towards the goals. And then when things don't work out the way that you've defined that you want them to work out, there's so much recipe for tension and disappointment when you have those goals. And if you're not reaching them in exactly the way you need to, or, along with this mistake goes the assumption that there's a right way to do everything. There just isn't. It's just not true. So as a music teacher, if you're conveying the impression that there is one right way to do anything, I believe you're doing your student and yourself a grave disservice, because it's just not true. And there are plenty of examples to prove that there is more than one way to do something, anything well. And it needs to be an individualized process for the teacher and the student. And there's a playfulness, there's a playful interaction that happens between teacher and student that fosters the curiosity and open-mindedness necessary for quick learning. So even though we think that a goal-oriented process and pushing is going to make us achieve our goals faster, at what expense? That's the question. So that's mistake number one, is to lose sight of the deep meaning and spirit and purpose and why for the teaching and learning and musical process itself. So keep the spirit top priority. All right. Whatever you want to, however you want to define the word spirit, you may just want to call it that love that is deep inside that you want to convey to yourself, to your student, to your audiences. That is the spirit that you want to put like top priority. Okay. So enough about mistake number one. Mistake number two, and of course there are millions of mistakes. These are just kind of arbitrary. 3 that I picked up off the top of my head that I believe are very important, but they're not in a particular order. Mistake number 2, it goes along with number 1. It's when you focus on specifics that are out there rather than recognizing and acting on the fact that creation, the creative process, happens, it starts in the mind. You need to be working on what's going on up here, above all, right? So what I see all the time is that teachers, musicians, people, we focus on physical specific body parts, for instance. Like you look at somebody's, how they're holding the instrument and you say, oh, well, you're not supposed to hold your violin like that, so let's go fix that. It's like we think the problem's over here. The problem is never over here. It's up here. And this is where you fix that problem, up here and not out here. Now, this is a huge topic, and this is what I teach my artistic mastery coaching clients and my Alexander Musician group students. This creative process of working on the idea in your mind and then trusting your body to execute it when you have clear intentions, that is what allows for artistic mastery and beauty to happen. When you create the beauty up here and you get everything else out of the way, you clear your mind, you clear your body of tension, then your ideas can flow through your body and out your musical instrument. And it works because that's how we are designed to function and operate. So working on what's going on up here has to be the bigger context, the container within which you then do include the little things like what's going on over here, or what's going on with your breathing, or why are your toes all tight, right? Those things are so secondary, and the mistake is to try to fix them where you see them showing up. If you've got tight knees, locked legs, the problem is not in your knees and it's not in your legs. It's how you are thinking that causes the brain to send messages to the muscles of the legs to contract and get tight and locked. It's always top down. And this is something that is so fundamental to how human beings function. It's like the air that we breathe that's so obvious, but we're not aware of it. It's like we even forget or are oblivious to the fact that that's how life works. It starts in the mind and it gets transmitted and manifested out there. So don't try to fix the stuff that's out there. Here's another example. If you're trying to play octaves in tune on a string instrument, for instance, I'm a violinist, so that's what comes first to my mind. Let's say you want to play, let's make it even simpler. Let's take a scale, A, B, C sharp. Let's say every time you get to that, let's say every time your student gets to that C sharp, it's flat. Is the problem that the finger is too low? Yes, but don't try to fix it over there. Why is the finger too low? That's what you've got to ask. Why is that finger too low every time? Well, it's not the fault of the finger. It's the fault of how the student is conceptualizing up here where that finger needs to go. And a lot of the time, it's because the student has no concept of what that note should sound like. They don't even know what that note is supposed to sound like. So how are they going to know where to aim? And how are they going to know if it's sharp or flat or whatever? So you have to train the mind, the inner ear, the imagination. What if you have a passage that is supposed to be fortissimo and with a really angry character, and the student is really focusing on getting all those notes right? Well, where's the character? The character doesn't happen out there in the hand. It happens in here and up here and in here. So we're just going at whatever shows up as an obvious problem, and it's always a kind of a small specific thing like that note is out of tune or that character is wrong, but it's where you've got to go to the source of the problem, and most of the times we don't do that. The source of the problem is always in how you're thinking, how you think about your body, how you think about your movements, how you think about a phrase, how you think about the character, how you think about rhythm, how you think about everything, how you think about your audience, how you think about communicating with your audience, how you think about communicating with your student. Okay? So that is mistake number 2, where you are not acknowledging, recognizing, and appreciating the fact that everything that you create has to start as an idea in the mind. And whatever problems you have, whatever specific problems you have, you don't address them in the specific place where they show up, because that's not the source of the problem. I hope this is making sense. It's really different from how most people think about teaching. I get that. But it's just a fact. This is how the mind and body work. Okay, third big mistake. This is a big one. They're all big ones. Third big mistake is to be modeling tension to your students instead of ease. To be modeling that goal-oriented approach that wants to get it right instead of that open, free, wondrous, curious, experimental, playful nature that is encouraging. So instead of focusing on the things that are wrong and trying to fix the things that are wrong all the time, get curious about what's actually possible. And to do that, the teacher needs to be able to do that for him or herself first. How many times As a teacher, have you looked at your student and seen that they are tense or tight, or that they need to relax a little more? How many times have you told your student to relax their arm, or relax their shoulder, relax their hands, let the weight of the arms hang? How many times have you seen a student that's nervous and you've told the student to relax? And how many times, come on, fess up, let me see in the comments. Have you ever done that to your student, telling them to relax? Well, that's easy. It's easy to say. What's not so easy to do is to first connect to ease in yourself so that you can transmit that in a deeper way than just telling them some words. All right, that means you've got to model the musician that you want your student to become. That is often not something that we think about. It's not something that's top of mind, especially because most of us are carrying, if not all of us, are carrying around more tension in our mind-body selves than we are aware of. We're not even conscious of the level of tension that we're carrying around and that we are modeling without even knowing it to our students. When you push your student and you get intense and you feel like you're very passionate about what you're doing, you think and it feels like that's what you need to be doing because you love what you're doing and you really care about your students. But if you think about, look at yourself, what are you actually transmitting non-verbally when you do that? You're transmitting a lot of tension, and your students pick up everything that you model them, whether you want it or not. They pick it all up because we have something called mirror neurons in our brains that cause us as human beings, that allow us to relate with each other. We pick up on everything. If I go like this, I'm sure you're feeling a little more tense right now, right? And then if I let go, you just relaxed and you probably started breathing. So as a teacher, you've got to be aware of what you are thinking and doing, how you are living. Are you learning how to be easier and more relaxed in yourself? Or are you not working on yourself, not improving yourself, and just expecting your student to relax? That's not fair, is it? Okay, so those are the 3 big mistakes that I see happening all the time. And I am not exempt from these. I'm the first one to admit that I fall into these habits like anybody else, because they're human habits. I am not presenting these as mistakes with any kind of judgment. These are human. These are this is human nature. But we can do better. And I think we are designed to rise above that kind of human nature. And what I mean by that is simply to become more conscious and to realize that we have the freedom, the free will to choose how to think and how to move and how to act and how to teach. And we get to choose what's important to us. It's so important. This is why my business is called The Art of Freedom. Because we need to realize that we have the freedom to take care of ourselves and to, be the ideal that we can imagine up here. So I hope this is useful and inspiring to you. And I would love to teach you the specifics. Now that I've kind of given you more of like the big picture abstract ideas, there are very, very specific ways to work on these things. I'm practicing it right now as I'm speaking. And this is what I teach my coaching clients. This is the main thing. How do you have an idea? How do you have an idea, a desire, a wish? And then get out of your own way, trust yourself, and let the spirit of that idea come out in creative, expressive ways that really convey the truth of who you are. That's what I help my coaching students with. And it's what we talk about in my Alexander Musicians group classes. So if you're at all interested in all of this, I would strongly encourage you and invite you to message me and ask me for a complimentary discovery session where I will talk with you personally. We'll hop on the phone or on Zoom, depending on where you live. And I will give you a questionnaire to find out a little more about what you might be wanting to learn, what might be getting in your way, where are you getting stuck? So I'd love to have a conversation with you where you can share that with me, and then I will provide some insights from listening to you. I often have, pretty good intuitive insights and suggestions for how you could work on these things. So please get in touch with me if you've never had a discovery session with me before and you're curious about taking action on learning more about these things. So you know how to find me, just message me. And before I leave, I just want to say hello to those people who are here. I see Angel is here, and Angel says, yes, they all say to relax, but can't tell you how to relax. That's so spot on. Yes. And if you're watching the replay and you want to see, oh, hello, Sandeep. I just saw your comment here about being very informative. I'm so glad. That's great. And if you are watching the replay and you have any questions, or if you're here now and you have any questions, you can type them in and you can tag me anytime when you're watching this video or comment. And you can also go to my website and contact me that way. Lots of ways to learn, lots of ways to grow. And thank you. Thank you for your interest and for being here. And lots of love. If you're a musician and you're not in my free Facebook group, you should come on over. It's called the Musicians Mind Body Practice Tribe. And I'll see you over there. Lots of love. Bye. Enjoy your music making.